Hi, everyone. I hope that everyone could actually hear me, but I'm not too sure, so I'm going to start again. Just with a brief introduction, my name is Tammy DaCosta, and I am representing CoinW. Today, we are going to be talking about crypto and what's driving crypto markets, as well as altcoins. And basically, we've got big money that has been following certain coins that we'll go into, but it is quite late in the afternoon now. It is 2 p.m. UTC, and this morning, as well as yesterday, we still had that continuation of that bullish momentum from Monday's rebound in crypto markets, and that has continued, or at least it's trying to continue throughout the rest of the week. For Bitcoin, if we just look on the screen and we're just looking at a brief overview, Bitcoin is currently trading, if we're looking on CoinW and the futures market, it is now trading just below 87,000. 87,000 was previous support, which is now resistance. The next big key level that we're looking at is that 90,000 handle. For Ethereum, Ethereum has been a lagger. It also got quite a nice boost, especially in sentiment and especially with regards to corporate backing. And today, one of the talking points was with regards to the big money and what is big money backing. Now, first, let's actually take a step back and let's consider what does that actually mean. So if we look at big money, we're looking at the institutional investors. We're looking at the likes of Strategy, which was former MicroStrategy. We're looking at Coinbase. We're looking at those big players that were actually in the forefront of driving the crypto rally to begin with. And we see that although there's been like a bit of lackluster momentum in terms of those investments, it has been gaining traction specifically this week. So if we, for example, we take into account and we look at Bitcoin and we look at Bitcoin price action, we have seen that it has been in almost a range, but there has been quite a lot of volatility. And then what we had over the weekend was a bit of a push, but once again, those ranges have been coming back into play. Now, if this will actually load, otherwise, okay, let's go here. So now let's look at the weekly performance. Okay, let's go back for a second. So on a weekly basis, and remember today's obviously only Wednesday, so it is still midweek, but Bitcoin is currently trading 5.42% higher, Ethereum 5.47%, and so forth. Then we have the likes of Dogecoin, which is a meme coin, but the Doge father is essentially, well, Elon Musk is the self-proclaimed Doge father, and he is also currently, basically, he's been taking control of the Department of Government Efficiency for the US under the Trump administration. So what we've had this week to actually explain some of these moves, we see Solana is also up nearly 13%. And we've had a little bit of a setback while in today's trading session. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a setback, but a bit of a pullback or correction after quite a bullish move that we will look at shortly. But just to explain some of what's happening and what's driving this price action, we do have some developments in regards to the regulatory environment. So we have had BlackRock, which is also one of the major institutional investors or investment banks. not only with crypto, but as a whole, it's one of the largest hedge funds and investment banks in the world. That means it's got a really, really large amount of money that's actually backing it. So, what BlackRock says, and a lot of these hedge funds and investment banks, you must remember, they didn't become, they're not like fly by night. They didn't become huge overnight. They earned their way to the top, and basically, a lot of what's happening in the background and a lot of where their money wants to go is with regards to what's actually going to happen or what they believe is going to be the next step for the future. So we've had BlackRock, as I said, one of the biggest, largest hedge funds in the world. They are now backing ETFs, and they're trying to take it into Europe, which we've obviously seen a lot of regulatory changes happening in the United States, but that's more been isolated to the US since the Trump election. We haven't really been seeing it filtering out to other economies. So BlackRock's push to get the ETFs in Europe has been a positive catalyst for Bitcoin. And then while Ethereum's been quite a lagger in terms of just price action throughout the whole crypto rally, we have seen that this week it is trading higher, which also gives us a bit of a positive boost. And then we also see, let's see on the regulatory front. I'm just going to change this quickly and I'm going to add prices. So recently we've been talking about just a bit of price action, and just to put it in perspective, at the moment, if we're looking at Bitcoin at the bottom here, Bitcoin, the market cap is currently at 1.73 trillion. Now, I looked a few moments ago, and the total crypto market cap is sitting at around about 2.85 trillion. So we do have a positive lift as a whole. And then once again, while one of the major moves that we did actually see while post the Trump election, or at least the Trump announcement, was the fact that the crypto market cap went above 3 trillion. So that's our next big level of resistance with regards to the total market cap. And things like this, while where there's the weekly performance is up, but then look at the daily performance, we do have, as I said, we had a strong uptrend this morning. We are now getting a pullback, but things like, tokens like Dogecoin, which has also recently had more of a push, especially with regards to, the whole Doge, Department of Government Efficiency. We have had a few regulation updates with regards to that yesterday. They did say that the government would be actually purchasing Dogecoin, and we did see that the government, the official US government, is now taking more of accountability and taking more strategic approaches to actually see how they are going to proceed with building those crypto reserves. So Dogecoin has taken a positive liking to that, and in my opinion, it was expected, especially with Elon Musk being associated with Dogecoin and being associated with the Department of Government Efficiency. There is definitely a correlation there, and there's a positive boost coming from there. We also had earlier today, we had GameStop also saying that they are interested in getting involved in Bitcoin ETFs and in the whole crypto environment. So we've had those positive pushes, but we've had a lot of positivity since the Trump election. And what we've spoken about recently is the fact that that positivity, or that momentum of the uptrend, sometimes, well, we see huge momentum, and then we do see those levels at which prices stall. And then it becomes almost a zone of consolidation. And then we have to look at what's next, what's going to be driving the next big moves. So if we actually turn back to CoinW and we look at what's driving markets, or we look at an overview of markets, I apologize, my internet seems to be a bit slow today, but let's just have a look and see what happens. There we go. Okay, so futures. Let's take a brief moment to reflect on what's happening. And this is the 24-hour change. So Bitcoin, we now see, is down 1.13%. But once again, yesterday we saw advances of more than 4%. So this is more of a correction than it's more of a correction than an actual reversal. We see Ethereum. Now, Ethereum has definitely been on my radar, specifically because in terms of altcoins, Ethereum's the largest altcoin. It's the second largest cryptocurrency in terms of market cap, and it hasn't been performing as well as other altcoins and as well as Bitcoin. Now, if we look at something like Litecoin, we do see still a bit of positivity there. Dogecoin, as I said, that is still trading 3.74% higher. But now, what actually got my attention is if we look at the monthly news, and we are looking at, the top ones. I'm not too sure what's happening with my connection here. Okay, so we've seen a variety of coins that have been added, or we look at monthly new tokens, and we see Anime, Vine, Mubarak, Cake, and so forth. Now, these were all in the green yesterday. Now, Anime is still in the green, but the rest are actually trading lower. But if we looked at, for example, innovation, and if we actually looked at the recently added tokens, I'm going to stop my screen share just for a moment, just to get everything. Okay, let me reset everything, and then I'm just going to talk through it for now. So what we have at the moment is we still have innovation, that we've got a lot of AI that has been actually driving sentiment, not only from the crypto environment, but obviously we've seen AI stocks like NVIDIA has been a huge driver of the S&P 500 and NASDAQ. And now we have also had, over the weekend and on Monday, we have had more announcements of crypto partnerships with AI, which are basically being set in place to revolutionize the technology sector, but also the way in which we go forward and where do we go from here. Now, what was a bit of a trigger, or what sparked a bit of, I would say, not really, I wouldn't say bearish sentiment, but a bit of concerns, was yesterday there was also news with regards to North Korea and with regards to their cryptos and how cryptos have been performing. And there has been a lot of adoption with cryptocurrencies in North Korea. Now, why this is concerning is because a lot of this has actually been, well, there's speculation that it could actually be linked to nuclear. And this now sparks a bit of controversy, but also a bit of warning signs with regards to, okay, fine, are we going to need to step up regulations? And what happens from here to for us to actually make sure that these altcoins or a lot of these new coins that are being created, to make sure that a lot of them are actually following protocol, and so it's not actually just taking money out of the financial system and finding other avenues to get them to other places. So those are concerns that are expected to be confronted, and those are some of the things that not only the US Federal Reserve, but other central banks and the World Bank is actually looking at and trying to take into account. Okay, now, with regards to what we were looking at, like I said, I'll share my screen again in a second. Let's just look at, okay, let me just get everything up and running. Okay, so let's turn quickly to what's happening on the economic front and just what other catalysts there are in terms of regulations and in terms of what regulatory or scheduled risk events we actually need to be aware of this week. Now, the big factor that everyone's watching out for is actually going to be on Friday's agenda. But tomorrow today we had durable goods orders, and that came in at 0.9%. Now, if we look at durable goods orders, that means that's basically the amount of goods that are ordered on a month-to-month basis. So if orders are going up, that's positive for the economy, and that came in negative. So, but however, the actual print came in 0.9%. The forecast was negative 1.2%. So it was actually, even though the previous was 3.3%, it was actually a beat. So it shows that maybe the economy at this point in time isn't as weak as initially expected. Okay, so let me see now. Hopefully the screen's working and we can proceed from there. All right, so now if we turn to tomorrow's agenda, we see GDP growth rate, which is the gross domestic product. So how is the US economy actually performing under the Trump administration? So this is also backward looking. Previous 3.1%, forecast 2.3%. Now, all of this plays a role in driving sentiment for risk assets and for crypto, because once again, it is still seen as a risk asset, even though there are moves being made to try and get it regulated, especially in the United States. It remains a threat. Well, let's put that in inverted commas, but or let's maybe rather say that there is still some speculation, or there's still some skepticism around what's going to happen for the future of cryptocurrency, especially when we're looking at the world economy as a whole. And as long as there's still trade war threats, there's still tariff threats, there's still a lot of uncertainty at the moment. And even though we're still getting those boosts of, okay, positive and negative reactions, we're still looking for stability in the longer term. And especially after the past, I would say the past, since November, so let's say the past 5-6 months, there's obviously been a lot of positive sentiment that's still been contributing to the influx in inflows for crypto markets, primarily for Bitcoin. But we have also seen it in other projects. And now it's just a matter of whether those gains can actually continue and whether that bullish momentum can actually drive prices out of the consolidation zones. For Bitcoin, for example, that will be a huge area of consolidation or a huge area of resistance. Currently is 90,000, and the next key level of resistance is 95,000. So if prices can continue to push higher and do manage to break out of that zone of consolidation, we may see a boost in bullish momentum, and then that brings 100,000 back into play with the potential to retest the all-time highs of 110,000. Obviously, as they say, what goes up must come down, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to happen in the long term. But that means that a lot of the times, especially when we see that influx or that big push higher and a lot of that bullish momentum, we have to look at what points do those prices actually start to reflect the true value, or at least from the institutional investors, when will that actually be reflected as a true value of Bitcoin, or at least of crypto's current price? So those are the current factors that we're watching. And this is where we also turn to liquidity pools, and we just see like liquidation levels and where high liquidation levels are for institutions. For example, and I had it on another screen, I will share it tomorrow. Basically, if we're looking at, for example, the 90,000 handle, that's a huge psychological handle. But if we have a lot of sellers, what happens is if you're trading on margin and prices do actually push higher and get to 90,000, we've got a lot of liquidations. So sellers then can't actually find the margin to sustain their positions, and that's when we get liquidations. So these are a lot of factors that we actually have to take into account and that are going to have an influence on prices as a whole. The next big thing that we're looking at from the perspective of the economic calendar is going to be, while we do have consumer confidence out of Germany, remember that's Europe's largest economy. We've got retail sales, and then we've also got core PCE. Now, this is basically the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, and they are monitoring this to see what happens with interest rates for the US. Interest rates, once again, have an impact, especially if we're looking at stocks and at assets that don't necessarily yield interest. So, for example, if you put your money in a bank and you're getting a certain interest rate, that's still secured. So you know that, okay, fine, whether, let's say, for example, the annual interest rate that you're returning on your investment is 5.5%. Even though that's a fixed amount, if you're looking at something like stocks, which have been performing really, really well over the past few years, there's been other factors that have actually been, boosting that sentiment and boosting those gains. Now, we're going into another environment where there's a lot of uncertainty. So it comes down to, where do you put your money? What is the safe option? And this is where a lot of that skepticism comes in, especially with regards to risk assets. And that still applies for cryptocurrency at this point in time, especially when we're looking at altcoins. So let's just look at banter bubbles at the moment, just to look at a general overview of, let's look at the week. We see a lot of positivity on the week. And things like Solana, for example, is up 7.68%. Pepe, and we also have seen new stocks, or actually once again, new coins that have recently been added, not only to CoinW, but as a whole. And let's look at monthly news, and let's look at price changes. Okay, now these were all trading higher this morning. So we see anime once again is 9.56% higher. Now let's look at innovations. And I was looking at one specific one, which I can't find now. So top ones. Okay, once again, my internet is very slow, so I apologize. But a lot of these meme coins and a lot of these innovation or innovative coins this morning were doing really, really well. And that's continued actually since Monday or even since the weekend. So that's positive for crypto, and it's showing that there is positive sentiment. But like I said, once we have those huge rallies and we see that there are a lot of inflows now coming back into the markets, then it comes down to risk diversification, and it comes down to, okay, so now does the geopolitical environment with regards to wars and with regards to future policies, does that now correspond with what we're seeing in terms of meme coins? And there's still a lot of that. There's still a lot of uncertainty. So these are factors we need to watch. And I will prepare a proper presentation for tomorrow so that we don't have these issues in actually viewing what's been ranking and what's been performing. But as it stands at the moment, there's still a lot of uncertainty, although there has been positivity. And as long as Bitcoin remains above 85,000, there's still potential for further upside. For Ethereum, it's still looking a bit more of a bleak picture, but above 2,000, we can't actually rule out the potential for further continuation. Doge, once again, is still positive, and it has been benefiting from those regulations regarding the strategic reserve in the US, and the announcement that Dogecoin, or there are going to be about 10 million Dogecoins that are going to now be issued into the environment, so that now kind of secures, or it provides a bit more stability with regards to Dogecoin's future in the US and in those strategic reserves. Okay, now I finally got this this page up, and we're looking at trending markers. So once again, something like Party, which was recently added, this morning it was up roughly about 250%. It is now down 5.51%. Same as Mubarak, which was also added, if I'm not mistaken, last week. And that's got a lot of positivity, but we are seeing a bit of a pullback, especially with regards to altcoins. However, things have been changing very, very quickly, and as long as we get some positive sentiment, even if it's positive economic data, and tomorrow, as I said, we've got the GDP data, so that could still provide a positive boost in sentiment. In contrast, if we get negative GDP, then there are it tends to raise recession risks, and then fear sets in, which then impacts crypto. So these are all factors that we need to be aware of. And then there's also the technical levels. As I said, for Bitcoin, 85,000 is a key level of support. 87,000 has been the recent, or actually 88,000 has been the recent resistance level that has been holding bulls at bay. And then we've got 90,000 and 95,000. For Ethereum, that 2,000 level is still really, really big. And we need to actually get a positive boost above 2,000 and a break of 2,500 to then say, okay, bullish momentum is actually gaining traction, and we could actually see prices then moving higher, and that opens the door for other altcoins. So there's a lot to take into account. But if we're looking at top gainers and new listings, as I said, we have had Party, we have had Mubarak, and a few others that this morning were in the green, and that's provided a positive, while that was providing a positive boost in sentiment, we are seeing a bit of a pullback, but we can't rule out the fact that these coins are very, very volatile at the moment and are very susceptible to the risk profile and to broader economic risks. So those are the factors that I am watching. I'll check back with you tomorrow, and then we will go through other coins and market moving events, as well as what's developing in terms of projects and what are other potential factors to watch. Thank you once again for joining, and I will see you tomorrow.